Next, we will have the Honorable Dr. Jocelynne A. Scutt, who is a barrister and human rights lawyer practicing in London and qualified to practice in Australia. Her books include, among others, the Women's Voices, Women's Lives series of some 12 volumes, including Singular Women, Reclaiming Spinsterhood, and Taking a Stand, Women in Politics and Society, plus The Incredible Woman, Power and Sexual Politics, which has 2 volumes, The Sexual Gerrymander, Women and the Economics of Power, Women and Magna Carta, A Treaty for Rights or Wrongs, Beauty, Women's Bodies and the Law, Performances in Plastic, Wage Rage for Equal Pay, Australia's Long, Long Struggle, and most recently, the collections Women, Law and Culture, Conformity, Contradiction and Conflict, and Women, Power and Autonomy, Rights, Respect and Representation in Law and Society, which is scheduled to be published in just a few days on the 12th of November. Her next collection, Finance, Feminism, and Fortune, Living in a Monetarized World, is currently considering abstracts. So anyone with an idea for a chapter, please be in touch. Her films include The Incredible Woman, A Green Shell Necklace, both with Karen Buzinski Lee, and Covered, a DVD installation in 3 streams, debating the scarf, romancing the veil, and the contradictions of cover. It is such an honor and pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Scutt. I hand the mic over to you.
Thank you very much, Cara. Appreciated. Well, I've come on to talk about abortion rights and the fact that, amongst other things, in this country, the United Kingdom, I think many women believe that abortion is legal and therefore there are no problems relating to it. And that, of course, is contrary to the actual position. In England and Wales, although abortion is legal under the 1967 Act, it's also rendered illegal and still criminal if it doesn't take place in accordance with the provisions of that Act, which are restrictive and which are directly sex discriminatory. There's also, of course, provisions in the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act, which make abortion illegal, and that act still exists. And what women also do not know is that if they undergo an abortion, a termination of pregnancy, then a report is made on this to the Chief Medical Officer, either in England or in Wales, depending on which country it is, and so that there's a permanent record of the fact that the woman has had the abortion. And as I've said, it's directly discriminatory because it's necessary, first of all, to have the abortion to be legal. It must be carried out under that 1967 Act. Secondly, 2 doctors have to effectively approve the abortion, and there's no medical operation that men undergo where the approval of 2 medical practitioners is necessary. So it's clearly directly discriminatory on the ground of sex. There's no question about that. And one of the problems in this area is that rather than being regarded as a health matter and as health treatment, abortion is in the category of being regarded as a matter that can be interfered with effectively on religious grounds. That's more prominently the case in the United States, and we know that from history and also from contemporary reports as to what is happening in the United States. And the last but one books you referenced, Cara, in Women, Power and Autonomy, Rights, Respect and Representation in Law and Society. The issue of abortion is one of the chapters that I've written for that book. And the reason that I wrote it is because one really has to look at this issue on a global basis. And if we think about Western countries, the United States, Canada, Australia, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and this country, abortion is treated, as I said, differently from male operations. There's no male operation that's regarded in the same way. There's this morality that attaches to it, and there's the idea that women somehow are seen as illegitimate in terms of making decisions about our own health matters and about our own bodies. I think one of the elements here is that if one terminates a pregnancy, then there's a chance that what's being terminated is a male, potential male human being. And because male human beings who exist are regarded as important and as real, as human beings who count, and as women are not counted as human beings who matter, then I think this is central to the issue about abortion, because an abortion can be aborting a potential male human being whose rights are transcendent over women's rights. But there are other issues that I could go into in this regard. I mean, if one looks at Dobbs and Jackson, the case that repealed or overturned Roe and Wade. Roe and Wade's 1973, as we know, and Dobbs and Jackson is 2022. It may be of interest to people in this country, in the United Kingdom rather, that the judge who wrote that principal judgment, the majority judgment in Dobbs and Jackson, refers, amongst other matters, to Chief Justice Hale, who was a Chief Justice in this country. I'm sure most people, the name will be familiar, because Chief Justice Hale is revered in legal circles still, although his book came out in 1636 and was written the century before. He is the judge who said that rape in marriage is not a crime because women consent to marriage, and therefore that consent somehow embodies a real consent to whatever happens in sexual terms within that marriage. He also was the last judge to sit on a trial for witches in this country, in England, where the witches went to the were hanged because they were found to be witches. And he actually said in that case, or in his book, that he knew that witches were real because there they were in his court being found guilty. And anyway, the Bible said that witches were real. And he is a principal reference in Dobbs and Jackson. So one can see that the scholarship of Dobbs and Jackson, apart from the legal principles that are enunciated there, the scholarship is certainly wanting, and the judgment itself is, one might say quite bluntly, misogynist, because it does not recognise women as human beings with the capacity to make decisions for ourselves and the ability to determine whether we want to be mothers or not. And if a woman makes a determination that she is ill prepared to be a mother at the time that she is pregnant, then that determination should be respected. But of course, it's not in Dobbs and Jackson. And there are other, there are consequences of that all over the United States now. Certain states are passing extraordinarily retributive laws. Other states are going the other way and endeavouring to ensure that women can, if they're out of state, can come into that state to gain a termination of pregnancy. But then the states from which they are coming are characterising that activity as as being criminal in itself because they're passing across state lines in order to have that operation conducted on themselves. But perhaps there are issues that you would like to raise, Cara, in accordance with this whole question of women's rights. And it's not, in my opinion, the right to choose effectively. I've always taken issue with that way of characterizing it because, in my view, if a woman has an abortion, if she terminates pregnancy, it is because she has no other choice. If she had some other choice, she would take the other choice and she wouldn't do the termination or the abortion. So I think that to characterize this operation as a question of choice is really misunderstanding the position that women are in when they need to seek an abortion, because they need to seek an abortion because that is the only avenue that they can take in the circumstances that they face at that time.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Yeah, it's really interesting because I definitely have always seen the ability to terminate a pregnancy as a women's human right. And it's interesting to me that you point out Justice Alito's reliance on Judge Hale, because one of the things that stuck out to me in Dobbs and Jackson is that the justices had to consider the doctrine of stare decisis, which is whether to overturn a long-standing precedent, as you well know. And one of the factors the justices considered is whether any group of people had come to rely on the prior decision. And Justice Alito and the majority finds that no group of people had come to rely on Roe v. Wade. Now, whatever you think of abortion, you can only reach that decision if you don't think that women are people, if you don't think that women are full autonomous human beings. I don't know if you want to reflect on that at all.
Well, I think that you've hit the nail on the head, if I may, with respect, say that, because it is clear that women are still not regarded as human. I mean, if I can digress into another area that's also exercising my mind at the moment because of the issue about this Mr. Epstein and so forth. I mean, there's a really good book about this, The Lasting Harm, and it's on the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, when you read that book, and I really advise everybody, it's an excellent book to read. What comes across so clearly is that men do not see us as equal to them. I mean, I know I sound really naive in saying this, and I know that we all know this, but to read this book, the message comes through so clearly. We do not count. Those little girls, those young women, that those men used and abused in the most egregious way. They were young women who had aspirations. One wanted to be an artist, and the thought that there was a philanthropist that would put her exhibition on in New York was miraculous. She believed it. She was told by Ghislaine Maxwell, here's this philanthropist. Or somebody, she wanted to go to university, and Epstein says to her, oh, now what about UCLA? Here's this girl. No one in her family's been to university before. And here's this philanthropist, she's been told by Ghislaine Maxwell. What about UCLA? It's like a miracle. And they believed that this philanthropist was taking them seriously. They believed that their aspirations would be honored. And then, of course, that was not the case. And as I've said, the message comes through so clearly. They didn't matter. They did not count. And those men could only do what they did to them was because they were not seen as equal to them. They were not seen as human. And that's what comes through in Alito's judgment, in Dobbs and Jackson. We do not matter. We do not count. women are not equal. And whatever we think about our status, however much we've argued and campaigned and gained, and all the women before us, we still are not equal. We still are the other. And the abortion debate illustrates it so clearly.
Yeah. And so we should emphasize also that reproductive integrity is grounded in one of the articles of the Declaration. I believe the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights. I believe it's Article 3. It could be Article 2. I wanted to raise one more thing with you, which sort of circles back to the question of are women female, which is this. The Democrats put forth a proposal in 2022, excuse me, to codify Roe v. Wade and to make it national law in statute, in federal statute. And there was a debate when the bill went to the Senate Judiciary Committee. There was a woman who was there to testify in support of codifying Roe v. Wade. And she said during her testimony the phrase, people with the capacity for pregnancy. And there's a man on the Senate Judiciary Committee who's a very conservative anti-abortion senator named Seth Hawley. I might be getting his name wrong. Senator Hawley, Josh Hawley, that's his name. And he picked up on that language and he said, by people with the capacity for pregnant. Remember, this man is a conservative. He's a staunch Republican anti-abortion. And he said, what do you mean by people with the capacity for pregnancy? Do you mean women? And she couldn't answer the question. She said, I mean, some cisgender women can get pregnant, some trans men can get pregnant, some non-binary people can get pregnant. And then he said, so do you mean that this is not a women's rights issue? And she had no response other than to accuse him of transphobia. And so just like that, the Democrats essentially handed conservative anti-abortion Republicans the talking point that abortion is not a women's rights issue. Do you have any thoughts on that?
One can raise many thoughts. I mean, I think that we do have to be really very clear about language, and there can't be any quibble with the fact that A, women are the human beings who have the capacity for pregnancy. B, the decision to terminate a pregnancy is a decision that is up to the human beings who happen to be women. And being women is crucial to this. I think that one of the problems in this area when it goes to the whole question of women's health is that we come to a nonsense situation if we're talking about the fact that it was illustrated so well in Canada recently, where there was an inquiry into stillbirths and miscarriages. And the woman who was actually the one who was tasked with leading this issue actually put ahead as the very first issue that she raised was that men who identify as women should be included in this debate. Now, it's absolutely nonsensical because there's no way that a man can, of course, become pregnant. It doesn't matter how they identify, what they want to call themselves, how they want to say they're constructed. The reality is they cannot have children. And the women who were involved in that inquiry, who had suffered miscarriage, who had suffered stillbirth, were absolutely affronted, as they should be, at the notion that the principal issue that was the first that was raised was the issue about men who identify as women should be able to be included in the debate and the discussion. And I mean, it's so unmindful of women's, not just, not only women's biology, but of women's rights to be sensitive human beings and to have their issues taken seriously. because many women who suffer stillbirth, of course, they're devastated by it. They're emotionally traumatized by what's happened to them. And to put some other issue that's really got nothing to do with them as the first priority, understandably, they are affronted, but they're also being negated. And again, they're being treated as non-human. You see, if somebody wants to say people can become pregnant, then what they're doing is negating the whole issue of our reality as female human beings. And our reality as female human beings needs to be affirmed again and again and again, because in so many other ways, that reality is tugged from under our feet like a rug being tugged from under our feet. And it's happening in this area, which really goes to the heart and the soul of who you are as a human being and as a woman. So I think we need to reclaim the language, but I think it's very, very difficult. I mean, I'm originally from Australia, and I have to say that they're indoctrinated down there. And the people who hold positions, for example, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, all the human rights commissions, the equal opportunity commissions there are infiltrated, are dominated by this issue. And there's no one in those positions who's really representing women. I just really am bemused as to why it is. I think part of the reason in Australia is that postmodernism took absolute hold, and it's still entrenched down there to a certain degree, much more than in this country.
Sal Grover visited Washington, D.C., and we walked through the Senate office buildings asking senators to vote yes on a bill to protect women's sports in America. And of course, not one of them did.